The Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada Board of Directors, Mr. Snow.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Your agenda is in order. We're ready for the first agenda item, which is to approve the agenda.
A motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Your next item is to receive the General Manager's report. And we'd like to show you some pictures of a great public works project that commenced out in Mesquite, Nevada. You can see the demolition of the bridges for a portion of I-15 that goes through the city of Mesquite. And great construction project that involved a bridge slide as temporary bridges were slid in place temporary bridges were built and constructed, and new bridges for I-15 were slid into place with the assistance of the Federal Highway Administration. Their administrator was out for the project, and Susan Martinovich, the director of the Nevada Department of Transportation, was there for the bridge slide, along with Christina Quigley, Deputy General Manager of the Regional Transportation Commission. A great event, a great project. I want to show you what the project will look like when it is completed. And that interchange will be replaced with a couple of roundabouts, Commissioner Gianchiliani. It is a great project that, with this innovative construction method, will save the taxpayers about $35 million. And once the project is complete, with the roundabouts, which will not have traffic control devices on them, they're just designed to calm traffic and have drivers pay attention more closely to what is going on. And it will be a very green project, fewer emissions. People will be able to get to where they need to go quicker and faster, and in a very pleasing fashion. Great landscaping and some great views are being built into this roundabout project. Congratulations to the state, congratulations to the Federal Highway Administration, and to the RTC, which provided much of the funding for this project. I don't know if Director Martinovich wants to say anything about this before we go on or not, but it's a great project, great partnership we have with NDOT and our federal partners.
Is it the first one in the state of Nevada, the bridge slide?
Yes,
it is.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Jacob. It was a design-build project. It's our third design-build project, and then as part of that is the ABC construction, first in Nevada. We're very excited, and again, I just would like to compliment the team that put this together. Next week, this week was the first half, and next week will be the second half of the bridge. So if you have an opportunity to go out there, you will be able to see it. But we have a time-lapsed photography that we have been taking pictures, and we hope to be able to bring that and work with you all in showing that next week. But it's pretty exciting stuff. It's really cool stuff if you're a bridge geek. So all great things.
Thank you.
Very high tech. The bridge was slid into place using Dawn dish soap, I believe. And I think we got the Procter & Gamble company to donate that dish soap, and I think they may even be helping to fund the ribbon cutting when we have a big party. So, and I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, but literally Dawn dish soap was used to slide the bridge into place. So very innovative and very inexpensive. I don't know.
We went out on site, and just standing there, there was a bottle that you buy in the store, and you're going, wow, they really did use Dawn soap. So one bottle at each side, and it's like applied just by squirting. It was pretty incredible, the low tech for a high tech endeavor.
And the construction workers, obviously, the cleanest hands in town. Commissioner G.
Thank you. I think two things, too. I think the paper noted that the federal highway, someone came from the federal government, correct, Susan?
That was, yes, that was Victor Mendez, who works directly for Secretary of Transportation LaHood. Victor came out, and he's a very strong proponent. He used to be the director of Arizona, so I've known him for a while, and he was pretty excited and flew from Washington just for this, and then flew back the next day. Wow. Specifically.
That's pretty incredible. And I know that we used Utah companies, and that was possibly a little bit controversial, but nobody else had come up with that kind of an innovative design. Do our contracts allow, or do we have a procedure so that we would permit, or the companies selected will permit local companies to intern, mentor, take a look at how, or is this an exclusive to any one company, so that as we move down the road, we can get other companies in-state also trained on how to do this type of a program.
It is not an exclusive type of construction. Utah has been doing it, and this company was from Utah, and there's actually different methods. And so a lot of our contractors have been watching, we've seen that, and so none of the materials, none of the criteria, none of even the operations are exclusive. So we're hoping, and we intend to learn more, and maybe we didn't mandate this type at all. They
Right.
presented
They
it.
presented it.
We're hoping that maybe in the future, we can make this a requirement, and then that will prompt our guys, because they're very excited, and I think this is the way of the future to go
So to your
forward.
knowledge, did any of them monitor or participate or have anybody on site to learn the process to bring back to their
I
companies?
don't know if they were
Who
on
that might
site,
be.
but I know that a lot of people have been discussing with me and discussing with our staff, and so there's been a lot of background talk in watching this,
And
yes.
would this be something that our workforce board or someone through the trades could establish a training program to look at this, or some kind of engineering component? And I don't know enough about how that works, but it might be, I think there was funding from the legislature to do some types, I would consider this a retooling or a retraining possibly. So maybe we could take a look at something along those lines, at least encourage them to maybe look at that.
Absolutely, we'll look
Okay.
at that,
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner.
Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that partnership. I would like to say for the record now that I have been informed by Councilwoman Tarkanian that our discussion that we had at the last meeting involving the legality of bicycles riding on the sidewalks, while it is true that in general that is the case, that it is illegal in the state of Nevada to ride on a bicycle on the sidewalk, that there are exceptions to that, which the councilwoman was correctly referring to, and that is if the sidewalk is adequately wide and it has been duly noted, signed, and designated that portions of the sidewalk you can ride a bicycle on, and that's in conjunction with the project that's underway in her district, so I would like to note that for the record, and thank the councilman for her clarification in that regard, councilwoman for her clarification of my error there.
Thank you. So what are the widths of the sidewalks to make it a multi-mobile? I think, Lois, isn't that the term that they used, a multi-mobile? Thank you.
I thought it was just the 10-foot, but I was told when they looked into that, it could also be an 8-foot. But I have not checked that one out thoroughly. I just know, I was very concerned because we had already built this.
Right.
And, but the 10-foot, I do know you can use, and the 8-foot, I was told you could, but I have not checked that out.
Okay, and as long as the signage indicates it, then designates it as a multimodal roadway, then
Yeah.
they permit it.
Yes, you have designated it, and you have noted that you have signs along the way, so people know that it's multi-use, so you shouldn't have problems.
Okay.
Well, you
Does
might
that
have
include
some.
people walking dogs, or is it just bikes? You wouldn't let scooters, I wouldn't think, so it's just probably pedestrian and bicycles, I'm going to think.
It's meant for walking and biking, is what it's meant for. Somebody will sneak a scooter in there sometime, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So,
If
okay.
you're talking about the manually powered scooters, that's probably okay.
Yeah,
Powered
not the
scooters, that's a
powered,
no-no.
not. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I am very pleased to have the privilege to announce the RTC Superstar of the Quarter Award. And I've known this individual for a little bit more than 12 years. We both started about the same time. She works in the call center, which in my opinion is the most difficult job that we have within the agency. Yet this individual she's received nationwide recognition for the work that she does in the call center and the help that she provides to the public. Day in and day out, she does an outstanding job. One of my most favorite people ever, just a great quality person. Her coworkers say she's the glue that keeps the call center going every day. Pleasure to work with, takes pride in her job, maintains great relationships with her coworkers as well as her managers, goes above and beyond. In addition to working in the call center, she's an active member of the RTC Safety and Security Committee. She's an avid Disney fan and loves Mickey Mouse. Please help me in congratulating Superstar of the Quarter, Gwen Ware. Gwen, could you please come forward?
First of all, my name is Gwen, and I just want to thank everybody for thinking so highly of me, to recognize me. It was a surprise. I had no idea, and it's truly a blessing. I just want to say thank you to everybody, and I enjoyed the job that I do.
Congratulations to Gwen. What a delight to work with. A great way to start off the new year by recognizing her. We'd like to, for the next portion of the General Manager's report, we'd like to invite your Director of the Freeway and Arterial System of Transportation, Mr. Brian Hoff, to come up and give you an update on what the FAST Division has accomplished out at the Traffic Management Center at the Beltway and Decatur, and just to give you a general update on what we have to look forward to in terms of traffic management on the freeways and arterials of the valley. Brian.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Commission, for giving me this opportunity to present some of what we believe is very fine work that's being done by FAST, and I'm very proud and honored to be able to speak on behalf of the FAST employees and on behalf of the RTC. And before I get into my slides, I just want to put this into a little bit of context. There was a recent national meeting called Critical Data Needs for Decision Makings, and they held a conference, and RTC was involved with that. And there was a book called, or a report called How We Travel. And this book stated that the traffic data that we generate or that we need is important for supporting critical policy choices and funding and investments. However, it noted that this data is oftentimes incomplete, it's insufficient, and it's not timely. And this came out of a federal report. And I want to compare and contrast that with what was said about the FAST dashboard that was developed in-house and was recognized here at a board meeting recently. And some of the statements about that are a 180-degree opposite of what you found in this other report. It said that the dashboard was innovative, it was sophisticated, it enhances transportation investment accountability, it provides accurate and reliable information for transportation infrastructure decision makers. And I think that represents not just the work of the people involved with the dashboard, but the work that happens at RTC and in particular at FAST. And so with that put out there, I'll go ahead and talk to some of the things that we've done, some of the things we're doing, and some of the things that will be happening in the near future. And are you my... Okay, thank you, Jesse. All right, so first, the first slide shows a map of the freeway system. It highlights the freeway system, and we do have a lot of equipment out there, a lot of devices out there. I-15 is pretty well covered from the 215 Beltway up through Craig Road. That includes ramp meters, your message boards, freeway flow detectors, cameras, and so forth. We also have that coverage going up to the northwest on US 95, but that coverage is going to expand quite significantly over the next few months and the next year or so. The coverage is going to go all the way down to state line in California. We will, at some point early in 2012, be turning on the devices going down the 515 freeway to the Henderson Spaghetti Bowl. We have some of the equipment now beginning to be operated on the Southern Beltway. That includes cameras, and this expansion is just going to continue. There's great value in being able to operate the freeway. You can't just these days lay down a strip of asphalt, a strip of concrete, and walk away from it. We need to try to operate the freeway system and the arterial system as efficiently as possible, and these investments allow us to do that. So this focuses on a lot of things that we're doing with our partners at NDOT. The next slide focuses on some things where FAST has taken the lead, and if you've driven the Southern Beltway, you've no doubt seen these signs. They are soon to be turned on. We did turn them on to get this snapshot. Right now, we're operating the equipment as if they were on. We're getting the travel time numbers. We're comparing them with what we observe on the freeways so that we can ensure that we give the travelers reliable travel information. But more than likely, in the next few weeks, you'll see these activated, and this is going to add some great value to the Southern Beltway. And you'll see more of these types of deployments going on other corridors as well. Another successful project that was just wrapped up was putting a lot of ITS devices up and down the Las Vegas Strip, and these cameras came in very handy a couple of weeks ago with New Year's Eve. They're very beneficial this week with the CES show in place because a lot of that traffic spills onto the Strip. And here's a couple of shots you can see. This was on New Year's Eve, the fireworks going off, and FAST and RTC received a lot of compliments about having those cameras available for the New Year's Eve coverage. Here's a shot on the Strip. The Strip is oftentimes congested, obviously, and this will give us the information we need to see what we can do to help inform travelers and help with the signal coordination. Another big value of those signals I'll show you in a second, but I want to talk a little bit now about a lot of the core business that we do. Our core business has been freeway operations, but it's also been the traffic signal coordination, and that continues to be an ongoing effort that we make. But we need to focus on a lot of the other specifics as well. For example, you've seen the promotions about the flashing yellow arrow. This year, 2012, in conjunction with NDOT and with the local entities, we are going to be deploying over 200 of these in City of Henderson and Clark County. That will be the first part of the year. Later on in the year, we'll also be putting them out in Las Vegas and out in North Las Vegas. So this is what we'll be replacing what we call the doghouse setup, where you have the permissive green ball to turn on. This is proven to be a much more effective and safer way to manage those types of turns. Another new feature that travelers will be seeing pretty soon is something called the Hawk signal, and this is going in as part of the Sahara Express project. This is out at Sahara and 15th Street. Here's a shot of it. Not activated yet, but this will help to improve crosswalk safety, and we'll see a lot of benefits derived from this. So we look forward to activating this and see if there's other opportunities for this to go into place in the future. Yes.
Commissioner?
Thank you. What is that called? A hawk?
The Hawk signal and I'm going to have somebody help me out with the acronym.
High activity crosswalk.
High activity crosswalk area. And the way it will work is it's dark until you have a pedestrian show up. They push the button, and then it starts to indicate to the roadway that the intersection is going to be dedicated to the ped crossing. Peds cross, and then it returns to allowing the vehicles to flow.
And you changed the turnout right there on Sahara too, so they can't cut through, they can't make a left-hand turn?
Left.
Right, okay. And I think we have something similar at Maryland Park with the old Circle Park. We did a pedestrian push button so it notifies the lights ahead. So I didn't know that we had a term for that, so I'll have to remember that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, these are starting to show up, and they are proven to be effective, and so we look forward to seeing them operate in Las Vegas.
What's the cost of those versus flashing? I mean, do we have a comparison for, as we ask our public works in places where we get requests from constituents? Do we have, I imagine it's pretty expensive, but.
Off the top of our heads, we don't know.
Okay.
We'll have
Just
to
find
check.
out of curiosity, since I live on 15th Street and I deal with cut-through traffic on a daily basis.
We will definitely get that information. Thank you for the questions. Another part of our core business, obviously, on the next slides, emphasizes the need, obviously, to coordinate traffic signals for all modes of the traveling public, and we have definitely stepped up in the last several months and years our collaboration with our transit department to make sure that we're giving the transit vehicles as much of the service as we can get to help improve. And this is being manifest on corridors like Boulder Highway, where the new express service just went in recently, and we'll be doing the same things as we deploy the Sahara service as well. Cameras benefit us from observing things. We have a lot of collaboration with our transit partners, and we're able to quantify the benefits of providing effective service like that. And another example of that is on the next slide, just outside these facilities with the work that we've done for the exclusive lanes and the signal coordination that's involved with that. Stepping away from transit and signal coordination and so forth, a few more examples, especially in the outlying areas. A lot of times you associate traffic congestion and traffic operations with the urban area, but this next slide, actually the Mesquite one, shows some work that we've done out in Mesquite in the last couple of years. We have put 11 cameras out there, and we will be adding a couple more. We have also added the traffic signal controllers to about 11 intersections, and there may be some more of that as well. But this allows us to put in some timing plans out in Mesquite, observe the conditions, and help manage with incidents. We were working with NHP in Arizona and Utah earlier this week when there was a fatal that closed I-15. With the cameras and the devices out here, we're able to monitor conditions and try to help out with service throughout southern Nevada. Another example where we've partnered and worked closely with NDOT is out in Boulder City. As traffic congestion grew over the holiday seasons last year, we rushed out there, got some cameras put in place. We put cameras at 93 in Veterans Memorial, 93 in Buchanan. We put a camera up at the water tower. We also put some freeway flow detectors out there so that we could monitor and quantify travel time and traffic volumes, and did what we could while the roadway was under construction. And then if you flip through a couple of slides, and here were some of the delays from the past year, but the next slide will show you how things are starting to move better. These are some snapshots, or this is a snapshot that we took a couple of weeks ago during the holiday seasons. The trucks are obviously back, but we monitored quite thoroughly and quite extensively the performance of the Buchanan signal, adjusted timing. We wanted to make sure that we could get the vehicles traveling through that intersection as safely and efficiently as possible, but we also obviously can't shut out the locals, so we have to make sure we provide the appropriate green time for people coming out of the downtown section, and stayed on top of that throughout the holidays. And then the next slide shows what the roadway looks like as you get closer to the dam and the hacienda, and this has definitely helped to alleviate a lot of the congestion that we had in the prior year, and we'll continue to monitor this closely, especially on big holiday weekends. We get another test this weekend with the Martin Luther King holiday, so we'll be seeing what's going on with that.
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor?
It was a lot better this holiday season, and because of the widening with NDOT and everything else. One question I do have, when you accounted for the holiday traffic for the signaling there, do you go back after the holiday, and readjust it? Because the one complaint we do get now consistently is that if you're going from Boulder City through the light towards Vegas in that direction, you're there 2 or 3 signals every time. And my work's close by, and I sit and watch that, and that's the complaint we get now. So after the holidays, you go back and kind of readjust that so our locals don't have to wait so long?
That is our plan, and if that needs some touching up, if we still have some issues out there, we can get on top of that immediately and make sure we have separate plans for the weekends and plans for the non-high traffic weekends. Also, we focused quite a bit of attention at the Buchanan intersection. Obviously, we need to look at Veterans Memorial as well. So we can quickly get out there and make sure that it's operating. The cameras and our staff and information that we receive are
mostly the
helpful.
Buchanan intersection is where we're stacking it.
And that's
so.
for locals stacking on Nevada Way, trying to
On
get
Nevada
through the
Way,
intersection.
yes. That's where
Yeah.
we're getting the complaints now. And typically, during the day, you could be there 2 lights, and then on weekends, 3 lights. It
Okay.
really backs up.
We'll spend some more time looking at that, and we'll make the proper adjustments, and I
All
think
right.
you'll
Thank you.
definitely see some improvements.
Brian, if you could make sure you share that with the mayor's office.
Yeah, once we do
Councilwoman?
that.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? The light isn't going on. Continuing on that vein, I just wondered how the integration works between the local governments and your office and that. So how do you make those adjustments, and how do you work with local offices and public works departments?
We work very closely with your public works staff and their signal departments, their traffic engineering departments. Once a month, we have our formal OMC meeting where we discuss these issues, but throughout the month, our technicians are working with their technicians, and the engineers are working with the engineers. Complaints come in directly to us. They may come in through the local agencies. They're relayed to us, and almost immediately, we're springing into action to see what we can do. A lot of times we detect the issues on our own. We can use the cameras, we observe things out in the field, but we also do rely heavily on observations from others, and then we're able to go out and typically respond to them in a good manner, and then close the loop with information to whoever provided the information. But it's a continuous, ongoing effort there.
Brian, are those adjustments made from the office, or do you physically have to go on site to adjust?
It can be a combination of both. Well, one of the benefits of our traffic management center, and especially coupled with intersections where we have the cameras, is to watch the performance of the intersection, monitor things with our computer software, punch a few buttons, change a few numbers. see the signals operate a little bit differently, see if it's doing what we need to, tweak it a little bit, and continue to monitor it. So it's a combination of both. If we have the ability to adjust things from the traffic management center, then obviously the response is a lot quicker, but we can, if necessary, get people out into the field to do some things as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Another example of not necessarily being given advance notice of an incident is when things like this event occur. This is the I-15 closure that resulted from a tanker truck fire on August 10th. So we woke to the news that I-15 was completely closed in the southbound direction. The initial estimates were that it might be closed for a day or so. Regardless of how long it was going to last, we got our technicians out into the field. We made sure that at the Traffic Management Center, we were monitoring things to the extent that we could. We used our dynamic message signs. We also had some arterial dynamic message signs at Las Vegas Boulevard and Range Road, also on Craig Road to inform travelers. We made sure through our public information office that the media was being notified and the travelers were being notified, worked very closely with NDOT, and were able to retime and adjust the signals on Martin Luther King, Las Vegas Boulevard, and a few of the other signals so that the traffic wasn't totally horrible. The bottom picture shows that we did get things moving pretty well on Martin Luther King, and we had to accommodate during the peak hours up to 5,000 vehicles and 500 trucks that would normally have been on I-15. So this was a good example of being able to play the hand we were dealt that particular day and have it turn out reasonably well, all things considered. And that has also been associated with other activities. Another area where we work very closely with NDOT is on the next page. This is a shot from the design build project at the south part of I-15 between Tropicana and Silverado Ranch. Oftentimes the work will require major lane closures or even in some cases full freeway closures. We get together with the contractor, the engineers, NDOT, pre-plan what we're going to do to divert traffic, handle the traffic, and we've had some successes with that. And there's a few events coming up in April and May where we'll need to work with them closely again, and we've already started to have the big conference room table discussions to start planning how we'll be able to aid them in those efforts. So that's an example. The recent crumb rubber overlay project that caused a fair amount of gridlock in September and October. The data that we generate from that dashboard allowed us to work with NDOT and identify opportunities to speed up the construction process. And so that project finished 10 days earlier, and we helped to get everybody comfortable with those decisions. Another one, collaboration obviously is important with the entities, your local entities, but it's also important with the up-and-coming transportation professionals. And this slide shows one of the graduate students at UNLV at their Transportation Research Center. His name is Naveen, and we provide them with a lot of the data that we have at our Transportation Management Center. We can get them access to components to our freeway software, our arterial software, the cameras, so on and so forth. And they are doing a lot of excellent groundbreaking research that we're happy with. So that partnership is important to us, and we're glad that we can facilitate it and help them out. We are also working even at the high school level. We're on the advisory board for the award-winning ATEC school. And some of those students will be coming out to tour the Traffic Management Center. So maybe we can capture some of these younger folks before they even get to college and steer them in the direction of traffic operations and traffic management. Last couple of slides. Another example of how we use our equipment is to inform people about not necessarily freeway performance, but advise them to travel more safely. So whether it's the handheld cell phone devices or other public service messages, we're definitely working in partnership with the local law enforcement and NDOT and others to get the word out. The work being done here in Las Vegas is starting to be recognized by others throughout the country, so that hopefully when national reports like the one that I quoted from at the beginning of my presentation, hopefully they can use us as an example of doing some good things. This is a trade journal, the Transportation Management and Engineering, where we got the cover shot for their recent publication. Not on your slides is the local Boulevards magazine, and This is for your community, culture, design, and flavor. So they have nice articles about the latest coffee shops and things like that, but the traffic geeks even got to share some of their limelight. So we can work both ways. We can work in our profession. We can also be recognized in the community, which was kind of a nice change of pace for us. A little bit more on the national front is that just in the past year, we've been invited to participate and present and play a very active and even leadership role at conferences throughout the country. And what's even better about this is that they've paid the way on all of these trips. So we've gone out to Orlando to talk about travel performance reliability. We've been in Washington, D.C. with the Design for Operations group that's starting up. We were in Chicago for the performance-based planning workshop. We were in St. Louis to make some presentations, receive our award, and participate there. And then finally, we were also in Los Angeles recently to talk about regional traffic signal coordination. So there's major benefits in being recognized in the country as one of the leaders for what's starting to happen with traffic operations. And then finally, with regards to that, of course, we were recognized by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for the work that was done in-house, and the key engineer there and one of your former superstars is Gang Ji, and he's been a mastermind behind that. And I don't know who the geeky guy in the middle is, but he tries to get some of the credit when he can. And then the last example is that another national outfit, the Transportation Research Board, we were the local host for their conference in July at the Mirage. It brought in about 200 transportation engineers for a 3-day conference. We were on the program 3 times. We also gave them a tour of the Traffic Management Center and the Sunset Maintenance Facility to stress the importance of integrating the modes of transportation. And that was another example of what we're doing here in the Valley, being recognized as leading edge opportunities to help serve the locals and hopefully promote better traffic operations. So that concludes my remarks, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We want to recognize Brian and his great staff and thank our partnership, thank Susan for the partnership we have to work in conjunction with the state. And would you just like to say for the record that John Pinuelos from the City of Henderson is the City of Henderson's representative on the Operations and Management Committee that provides oversight and direction to the FAST group. They meet every month. Does a great job. He's very, very interested and involved, as you would appreciate, Councilwoman. That concludes the General Manager's report. And so, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, your next item is to conduct a comment period for citizens' participation to receive comment for agenda items that are on this agenda.
Do we have any cards that have been filled out? Here they come. And as a reminder, this first public comment period is limited to items that are on today's agenda only. There'll be a second public comment period after our agenda is concluded. If you wish to speak on an item that is under the Commission's purview, but is not on today's agenda, we will have the second public hearing. Mr. Farlow.
Chairman, Todd Farlow, 240 North 19th Street. First of all, I'd like to say that you've got a great staff. Because of them, I have an inkling of what a farm keyhole plug is on number 5. On item number 11, I want to make sure that any roads in there does not deny us access to the BLM's designated trails that go around Indian Springs and Cactus Springs area. I say that because there's some environmental Nazis out there that want to deny all access to those trails and for four-wheel driving or bicycle or whatever. And the BLM has got the designated trails, but there's a movement afoot out there to deny access to the trails themselves through whatever, blocking it off. And I want to make sure that those trails are kept open, or the access to the trails.
We'll look into that, Mr. Farlow. Representing the area, I know that they're very independent out there, so they would probably fight anything that restricts them. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kemfer, if you could hold off, let me go through the cards. Patricia Anderson.
Good morning, everyone. I will not be able to stay to the whole meeting, but I have a concern about the drivers as far as their money is concerned. Their lunch, you know, they drive 12, 13 hours. They have no lunchtime. They took the money away, and I think they should get it back. I'm concerned about that. They, at a bus stop or they were at a time point, they had 3 or 4 minutes, they grab a granola bar or what have you, and that's supposed to be, you know, they say, well, that can help me until I get to the next point. But that's not really lunch. So if you can get them back their $265, I would be appreciated. Okay? Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Oh.
a question?
Ms. Anderson? Was it?
No,
Oh,
for
well, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Snow.
Thank you.
Was there a recent negotiation with the bargaining units to give them pay increases?
Yes.
And what was the amount of that?
I can't say definitively what the amount was. We have conducted an analysis internally that looks like there was about an 11% increase in salary, wages, and benefits.
For this year?
Excuse me, Commissioner, that was over the 2-year period of the collective bargaining agreement.
Oh, okay.
I believe it was about 6.5% one year and 4-something the other year. And I believe the pay they used to get for the lunches was rolled into the, whatever the wages are now.
So
in the
that
new
was part
collective
of
bargaining
what they
agreement.
negotiated?
Yes, that's my
Okay.
understanding.
All right, that was part of their negotiation. Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
And
that.
our next speaker may be able to shed some light on that. Mr. Rasky? Okay, as he comes down, Commissioner
I
Giuliani.
believe at one point we were told it was about a 20% increase, but it's really more of 11% than over
Yeah,
the
after
2-year
further
period.
analysis, on its
Right,
face,
on its
it
face, it
appeared to
looked
be
that way.
20% over the 2 years, but when you figured in the fact that they were no longer paying separately for the lunches and that was rolled into the wages, I believe the Finance Department's internal analysis is it's now about 11 or 11.5%.
Okay, and state law prohibits, you have to have a certain number of breaks no matter what. So I would hope that the contract complies with that, but maybe that can be elaborated on by the speaker. Thank you.
And so then if we were to roll back lunches back into it, then that increases the pay then to probably close to 20% is what you're saying? Pay increase?
No, I believe, that I don't know. My understanding from the analysis done by finance staff at RTC that the previous money that was paid additionally for not, under state law that's permitted for not having the lunch break, you have to compensate them. That was rolled into whatever the actual pay was this time, not paid separately. So it's included in whatever their hourly wages are or something.
Okay.
I believe that's how it was done.
Okay.
Can I just make note, Mr. Chairman?
Councilman.
Just make a note that this is collectively bargained stuff that both the employer and the employees come to an agreement on when there's a collective bargaining system in place. So we certainly understand your concerns and for the drivers, but that was collectively bargained, I believe, Jeff, in
That's correct.
in that agreement. So, but we appreciate your comments.
I appreciate that, and Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I do need to state for the record that RTC is not a party to this collective bargaining agreement. These were negotiations that were conducted between Veolia and their union.
Jeff, good morning. Happy New Year.
Good morning. Happy New Year to everybody. Jeff Rask, Financial Secretary for ATU 1637. I can elaborate a little bit on that particular subject as long as it's in the collective bargaining agreement and agreed to between the parties that no breaks are necessary. And we did roll over the money into their wages to compensate for that, and the drivers were satisfied with it. So we don't have a problem there, just so you know. The wage scale, the amount, the percentage differed between different categories of drivers, anywhere from about 5% increase to about 22%, depending on how long they had worked for the company. If you have any more questions, I'll be glad to answer. I'm here today to address the request for a proposal to split the system. Our president isn't able to be here, so he gave me a letter that he addressed to you regarding this issue. He has spoken with our international regarding the splitting of the system, and we take the position that without safeguards for the bargaining unit, that we would oppose any splitting of the system whatsoever. And what I came up with were certain minimum labor standards and safeguards that would protect the bargaining unit in the event of splitting the system. And as soon as Jacob gets done with that letter from our president, I'll give you this. This is a request to incorporate minimum labor standards within the RFP in order to protect the bargaining unit. They would range from certain administrative functions to access to operators within the system, depending upon which company that they work for, which yard they work for, that the union would have access. Also, there would be some benefit standards and some wage standards. And I will be glad to meet with anyone to discuss that, and perhaps we could have that placed on the agenda at some point prior to the RFP going out. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kempfer?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Chris Kempfer. I guess on behalf of Veolia, although as I stand here right now, I'm here just to support the industry's involvement as a whole. And what was going to be a request turns out to be a thank you, because Jacob confirmed prior to the meeting that it is the intention of staff to give the industry, not Veolian and First Transit only, but the industry, an opportunity to comment on the procurement that's coming up. And we think that's very important, that those who will be operating the system have an opportunity to express to you what they think needs to be considered to have the best possible system at the best possible price that addresses concerns such as rural routes and otherwise deals with all of the concerns that you as a board have, that staff has. And so we appreciate Mr. Snow confirming to us that that opportunity will be given. Also, I would like to speak on the last item with regard to the increase in wages. There was an increase. Most of that increase, I've been informed by Mr. Collins, who's in the audience, relates to the lower end salaries being increased as opposed to the higher end salaries being increased. So what we did was get those people who were making less in our particular system, get them more money for the important service that they provide in driving and maintaining our buses. So anyway, thank you very much. And again, Mr. Snow, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to participate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on an agenda item? Mr. Snow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We now go to your consent agenda, which is made up of items 4 through 33.
I would move approval, but could item 20 be taken off of consent just for a question? Thank you.
Motion for the approval of the consent, taking item 20 off for discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We now go to item 20, which is that the Regional Transportation Commission approve the amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program for 2011-2014. Question.
Thank you. It may be on its face. I just was looking again at the list. On the Warm Springs Road from Las Vegas Boulevard to Pecos, I think I just read in the paper that there was an issue of constituents, and I don't think they're mine, they may be in Mary Beth's district, about the surface ability of the Windmill Road, and oh, it was in Ms. Packer's article, and that is planned to be redone or resurfaced. I just saw Warm Springs, and I thought, okay, let's make sure we're coordinating if they're going to do surfacing and you're doing fiber optic or something along those lines to make sure that, but that may not, they may be mutually exclusive. I don't know enough about how the work goes into play. Does any of that ring a bell to anybody? I could have had a brain dream.
No, I don't. I think it's something we want to follow up with Dennis Cedarberg, the Public Works Director. And
All right, it just caught my eye, and I remember reading something on Sunday morning, so I just want to make, usually fiber optic probably doesn't interfere because it goes through the right-of-way, I'm going to guess, but I have no idea when they do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move approval of item 20 then.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We now go to your non-consent agenda. The first item is item 34, that the Regional Transportation Commissioner receive a report on the proposed fixed route service changes and direct staff to pursue public comment on the proposed changes. And we have another one of your unsung heroes that we'd like to hear from today. A couple, actually. We've got Perrin Palestrant and Susanna Beaumont are here to make the presentation on the fixed route service changes. We'd like to have them come up and make their presentation, please.
Good morning. My name is Perrin Palestrant. I'm the Senior Transit Planner for the RTC. The RTC transit system operates 42 transit routes and carried more than 58 million passengers in 2011. Over the past several years, our transit planners have been able to address transit budget constraints by modifying routes, reducing service, and reducing frequencies. Up until now, we've been able to avoid eliminating full transit routes and still obtaining a significant amount of savings. The goal of the service changes I propose to you today are still the same. How do we achieve significant cost savings but impact as few passengers as possible and still provide a safe, efficient, and effective transit system? However, today I must propose to you two routes that we're proposing for elimination. We simply cannot continue to just modify routes, just reduce service, or just reduce frequencies. The first route that we're proposing for elimination is Route 207. Route 207 operates between the West Cliff Transit Center and the intersection of Stewart Avenue and Nellis Boulevard. This route also serves Meadows Mall, the medical district in downtown, the Bonneville Transit Center, and residential areas to the east of downtown. This route operates within a half mile of adjacent routes and has plenty of other alternative service around it. As a proposal, the RTC is proposing to modify 4 other transit routes to compensate for the loss of this service. The first route we're proposing to modify is Route 106. This is the Rancho Drive route. It would be extended south along Rancho to Charleston Boulevard and also serve the medical district along Shadow Lane. The Route 206 Charleston route would also be modified to serve Shadow Lane. Route 108, the Paradise Swenson route, would be modified along Stewart Avenue east of Maryland Parkway, between Maryland Parkway and Eastern Avenue. And Route 208 would have 2 modifications to it, one on the west end to cover Alta Drive between Buffalo and Durango, and on the east end along Stewart Avenue between Nellis and Lynn Lane. Now, there are some benefits to modifying these routes as well. With these 4 route modifications, it provides more service in the medical district than we have now. It provides more direct service, especially from downtown, the Bonneville Transit Center, to the medical district. It allows people along Rancho a 1-seat ride into the medical district area where they now have to transfer. And other routes, such as the 108, would allow direct service along the residential areas of Stewart Avenue to downtown and those that need to go to the airport and work along the resort corridor. The other route that we're proposing to eliminate is Route 211. This route operates along Smoke Ranch and Cary Avenue between Mountain View Hospital and the Cary and Nellis area. This route is also a half-mile route that has other services adjacent to it. The modifications that we're proposing with the elimination of the 211 is to extend Route 104, which is our Valley View Torrey Pines route, to the Mountain View Hospital, and to modify Route 214, which is our H and D Street routes, to cover the Cary Avenue portion between Simmons and Las Vegas Boulevard. The portions of the 211 that would be kept with these routes are along the more popular bus stops and would provide more service for them. For those along Cary Avenue that now may have to take 2 buses into downtown, they actually get a 1-seat ride. Those between D Street and Las Vegas Boulevard, they'll have a 1-seat ride into downtown. Another cost savings measure that the RTC has identified is to eliminate the redundant service along Sunset Road in Henderson. Currently, Route 212, the Sunset Road route, operates every 30 minutes, Monday through Friday, and hourly on weekends. And the Route 402 operates between Boulder City and the Sunset Galleria Mall. As a proposal, the RTC would like to extend Route 402 to the South Strip Transfer Terminal. In order to compensate for this, we're also proposing to reduce the service along the 212 so that it operates hourly between 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. However, with the 402 operating along the same corridor, they'll still provide 30-minute service during those time frames. They'll just operate opposite of each other. And then there's a small portion of Sunset Boulevard to the east of Boulder Highway that would have no service between 9:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. That's the only time that the segment between Boulder Highway and Pabco would have no service. They would still have service when the 212 is operating, also in the evenings and on weekends when the 402 is able to operate the service through this area. In May 2012, the RTC will be launching the Sahara Express route. This will operate along Sahara Avenue, where Route 204 currently operates. This route will have much faster service, operate in dedicated transit lanes, transit signal priority, level boarding, and have off-board fare collection. With the routing restructuring of this route, it would give people, especially on the east end, east of Nellis, a much quicker trip into the center of the area where the resort corridor is. Currently, they're spending well over an hour taking multiple transfers to get from Lake Mead and Hollywood to areas such as the resort corridor, Las Vegas Boulevard and Flamingo Road. With the Sahara Express, it would take away at least one transfer and significantly speed up the amount of travel time to get from the east end of the city into the center area and to make other transfers to go elsewhere within the valley. Other general service changes that we're making are our typical span of service reductions, which is looking at first and last trips of the evening, schedule enhancements, and other timing adjustments to help speed up the service. The RTC has also identified a paratransit service area adjustment where there's a couple routes that have low ridership, specifically the Route 217, the Warm Springs route. There's a small area along Dean Martin Drive that has very low ridership. We're proposing to restructure the service there that would retract some of the paratransit service area. Route 208 on the east end would no longer provide service east of Sloan. And we're also making another route modification east of Nellis on Sahara Avenue, where the 204A would no longer provide service along Sahara, Vegas Valley, or Hollywood. However, the RTC has identified several other nonprofit organizations to help compensate for the loss of this service. Among those are the Aid for AIDS of Nevada, Helping Hands of Vegas Valley, St. Rose Dominican Hospital, and ITN Las Vegas Valley, to name a few. There are community resources such as the 211 or the State of Nevada Aging and Disability Service Division Taxi Voucher Program. The RTC also has available the FDR program and Silver Star where available. Now, the RTC has prepared a robust service change outreach to make sure that enough people are touched while we're going through this process. We have a 60-day public comment period. We're going to have 2 public meetings that will be held at the locations where the routes are being eliminated. We'll have outreaches throughout the community at senior centers, shopping centers, grocery stores, and libraries. But most importantly, staff will be out in the field. We'll be at the bus stops. We'll be on the vehicles. We're making sure that we touch as many people as possible, keep people informed of these service changes, and make sure that they know their alternatives. That's the key for this, is knowing what alternatives there are, rather than thinking that the route is going away completely, to let them know that these routes are being modified where we can and compensate for the loss of service where the highest population of the ridership is, to make sure that they're still covered. And in some cases where there isn't a direct replacement, we have alternate service with the north-south or east-west routes that also intersect. So wherever they may not have a direct one-for-one replacement, they'll still have the opportunity to take a north-south route to another east-west route to get into the areas that they need to. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Comments or questions from the board? Commissioner?
Thank you. I have several. Did your staff ride these routes with the eliminated routes so they can get a handle on how it impacts
Yes,
folks?
yes, we've done quite a bit of research on this, both riding the vehicles with either ourselves, our transit monitors. We also have data that we collect, stop-by-stop level data that we collect. For example, the 207 carries about 600 passengers a day. We looked at what the impacts were of eliminating this route. 20% of the riders, about 120 per day, would have between 0.2 of a mile and 0.6 of a mile to alternate service, whether that's a north-south route or another east-west route. And of that 20%, less than half of that would actually have more than half mile. The majority of the passengers in those service areas, if they don't have direct replacement for service, are within 0.2 to 1/3 of a mile.
To another stop.
To another stop, yes.
Okay. Do we know, as we do that analysis, what the issue is with the 80% versus the 20%? And then do we know how many of those individuals may be elderly or disabled that might have that you don't want to keep putting them on the paratransit, so you want to make sure that they have access to getting that 0.2 to 0.6 of a
Well,
mile.
the 80% that are remaining, they'll either be part of the 4 routes that are being restructured, or they have the north-south routes that already intersect them. If they're already getting onto the intersection of, say, Pecos and Stewart, if they can't take the Stewart route, then they have the Pecos line to still take them to connect them into another route to continue on. As far as the seniors, we don't have an exact number of the seniors that actually ride, but several of the areas already have, if they don't have direct replacement, they have Silver Star service available to them.
That's at a cost, though.
Well, it's an existing service that we already provide, and there's an existing schedule for it. There is capacity on these routes to take more of them. And these are more targeted type routes that will take them directly to grocery stores and to
If you don't know
shopping.
who those people are, how do they know that that's available to them?
That'll be
Only
part
by
of-
going to the public hearings, or do we do a better job of trying to figure out who our client is so that we can say, here's what can make up the difference?
Yes, we're going to target those, especially those senior centers, such as the Jamestown Apartments near Decatur that currently have a route that runs right in front of them. They have Decatur as an alternative. Silver Star goes there. We'll make sure that we target those types of places to let them know that, hey, this route is going away, but these are what your alternatives are. It's either Silver Star or it's another transit route that comes by. We'll make sure that we target these specifically to relax them and let them know that they're not being left out without any kind of transit service.
Part of that information will be that the fare on Silver Star is only 50 cents, whereas the fare on fixed route is $2.
Right. And that's an incentive, but I don't know that folks know. So you might have an opportunity to target some of those folks to actually, where it's cheaper for them and they can still get the access. On Route 210, the Sahara BRT will be ends at Boulder. Is there a new route proposed then to complement that one? I couldn't quite tell from your map.
Yes, the route actually continues on in 2 branches. Boulder Highway, from Boulder to Wallapai, that's the part that's been enhanced with the dedicated lanes, but the route extends beyond that. One branch will continue to Nellis, and then north on Nellis to Lake Mead, and then east on Lake Mead to Lake Mead and Hollywood. So the heavy residential areas in that area will be able to take advantage of the Sahara Express. We also have another branch that operates to the south. After it turns onto Lamb, it serves Vegas Valley and the Desert Inn Nellis area. So we'll have service beyond Boulder Highway. It's similar to what the 204 is doing today. We're just converting it over to the Sahara Express. But the one branch that turns north on Nellis, we're enhancing it by bringing it even further into the heavy residential.
Hollywood then, which will make a
Yeah, we have
request
several
from
hundred
folks.
boardings a day through there.
Route 208, does this impact any of the ridership? We have quite a few students that actually hop our bus to O'Callahan Middle School, which is a good thing. Do we know, if we looked at any student impact? Because I know you've been in conversations with some of the superintendent on some of potential down the road. Do you know offhand? Do we track how many kids actually ride our buses?
Yeah, we do have, we could look at what our student fare, it would be lumped in with our reduced fare, but we would have a gauge. Over the years, the ridership on there has dropped a bit. We used to go directly in front of that middle school, and then over time we peeled it back a little bit. The ridership from the middle schoolers isn't as high as high schools. High schools tend to rely on public transit more than their middle schools. They still have either their parents drive them or they get rides elsewhere. So we don't expect there to be a major impact for those students.
Okay. And then what's the ridership average from the transit park and ride to the downtown core? Do we know what that is right now?
Right now, it's a couple hundred a day. We do have the West Cliff Airport Express that provides even faster service into downtown than what the 207 does. We have the 208 that will still be going to the transit center. That also goes to downtown. So even the 207 will no longer be providing service to the Park and Ride. We'll have the 208, the Washington route, and the West Cliff Airport Express, which that's much faster and serves the resort corridor and the airport too. So it has a little more utility than some of these local routes do.
Centennial Express is going to be reducing from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. What impact will that?
We've looked at ridership. We have a program that gives us ridership by trip, and what we did was we looked at those trips that had high ridership, and we maintained service to those. Other ones, we have some that are on the fringes that have room to move, and so if we consolidated them with other trips, we would back up the time for the one after it and then moved up the time for the time that they would normally get.
Okay.
Still make sure that people can get to their jobs on time and still have the capacity on the vehicles. For those that we know that we would go over capacity by eliminating them, we've kept those in place.
Okay. And at some point when you do your public outreach, we do have people on the bus themselves and we post the notices. Do we solicit cards or make that available in case they can't come to the meetings then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we'll make sure they have plenty of public, the 60-day public comment period will give them that opportunity, both on the buses or directly to us, to the RTC via email or telephone, and we'll make sure we get back to them as well.
Just a couple more, sorry, Mr. Chair. Route 119, it's reducing the hours, 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. for weekday frequency. What is the current rider time? Is it 30 minutes or 20 on that one?
Right now, actually, it's hourly north of Cary, and it runs every 30 minutes from Cary to the southern end. However, we've just completed the schedules, and what we're doing is, because this route is more of your typical peak commute times, in the AM you have a heavy flow to the south, and in the evening you have a heavier flow to the north. We've been able to preserve 30-minute service to the south in the mornings, and then 30-minute service northbound in the evenings to compensate for the travel patterns to and from work. During the midday and the other hours will be hourly.
Okay. And I'm going to go back a little bit to the Hollywood, Tree Line, Vegas Valley. Question was, what is the impact on Las Vegas High School and the Center Tech Academy that's there?
Las Vegas High will still have the 206, the Charleston route, that runs every 20 minutes through there. The other school, once the branch goes away, that would lose service. It was a fairly new service that we had within the last year or so, but with the Sahara Express, the branch would no longer serve there. But they would still be able to have access to Sahara to catch the Charleston route as it's doing its loop along Tree Line and Sloan back to Charleston.
So will we let the principal know at that school? Because you do have quite a few young people that actually rode the bus.
Sure.
Okay, because they come from different parts of the valley. And then on your screen, you showed seniors and disabled, and you had Opportunity Village and one other one. But really, they only serve their own clients. So who handles the blind or the visually impaired? And what do we do with our social services folks if we make sure we've reached out to our staff and social services that give the tokens and so forth? And then remind me what other nonprofit bus or transportation. We have a couple of new groups. I didn't see them on your screen there.
Sure.
ITN is one of them.
Right. Commissioner, I'll kind of jump in and help a little bit. Sandy Stanko. We have several nonprofits that we're working with, ITN definitely being one, Helping Hands of Vegas Valley, Helping Hands of Henderson, let's see, who else? Of course, AFAN, Opportunity Village, Linda Hand in Boulder City. So there's several nonprofits that definitely will be helping out, but we will, as part of the outreach, we will definitely be working with the community to make sure that they're aware of the resources available, that they're aware that there is some potential service cuts, and if we need to assist them, again, these programs are already funded through New Freedom dollars, but if we need to assist them, like Helping Hands of Vegas Valley, we know with the elimination of the 207, they've already asked us if there's a possibility that they could get an additional vehicle to help meet that demand, and we're looking at getting them that vehicle too.
And then do we also look at routes that are near manufactured home parks? Because you've got a lot of seniors that live in those, to make sure that there's not a negative impact that comes in.
Yes, and in this case, we don't have that.
I didn't see any necessarily on the route, but I have 33 of them in my district, so
Sure.
I better ask.
No, we preserve service to the rest of those areas where we've been able to modify other services, other routes, or we already had existing routes in those areas.
Okay, and then I think Lois is going to ask a question about a mutually area I picked up, but that's really hers, but I happen to serve on the nonprofit board for Clark Towers, and we wanted to make sure that some folks, sometimes your senior properties are at the tail end of the pickup, and so the bus, it's full by the time they get to them, and so they are without a service, even though it looks like they were able to pick them up. So I think that that's something worthwhile to discuss. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And
Thank
this-
you.
Excuse me. And this has happened a lot at Clark Towers, several times, and it's a consistent thing, so that maybe should be looked into.
This is on the Silver Star route?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Since I now have the chance to talk, I wanted to say, first of all, a thank you to Jacob Snow and his staff for making sure that this item states that we're going to be looking at these possible changes and we're going to pursue public comment before we vote on the changes. I think that's very important, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate Carissa G's comments on all the different routes, because there are little intricacies there that sometimes we're not aware of, but they're very big things. We have on that Route 207 more than one senior home. We have 3 that are involved there. We have the Meadows Mall, we have the Y, we have several churches, and these are things I think we have to look at very carefully. I don't know, you said there were 200 passengers on that?
There's 600 daily boardings on the 207.
600.
But 120 of them would be the ones that would have to walk more than 0.2 of a mile to alternate service. Meadows Mall is still served by the 104, the Valley View route, and then the YMCA as well, right at the corner of Valley View and Meadows Lane. And a lot of the senior centers, especially the senior homes, especially in downtown, the 208 operates along that portion of Stewart already, so we still have service to those areas as well, into downtown. And that's why it was so important that we left as much service to the medical district as possible from downtown. And it's actually an improvement over what they have today.
Right, right. And then the other thing, this gives us some time, except I wanted to say that the meeting that you had planned for the Meadows area, which would include the senior homes and the Y and so forth, is the 21st, which was 9 days from today, or 8, and I just would hope that you would get information out there, not only to those who are in the senior homes, where you might be able to talk to the people there individually or put up posters, but also if there's a way to get information out to in the Meadows area, in the Y area, so that those people could be involved and invited to the meeting also. And I don't know if you have enough days for that, but maybe you do. It's hard, I know, when we set up neighborhood meetings, to do it in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get this word out as much as possible to people. We have a lot of different ways to get the word out. This will go into the newspaper as well and through other media outlets, and we'll make sure that we have targeted messages to those places that are surrounding the area.
And the reason why this is also critical is the city, we've been working very hard on the connectivity of biking, walking, public transportation. It so happens that that route goes right in the middle of what we've been doing there. We're having a walkable community that's being formed there near the Meadows. We have a couple of other things similar to that. And really, we've been working on with the Alta busing in mind as we've developed this connectivity. And what's going to happen now is we're going to pull that out, and we'll see, and this gives us enough time so that we can see if it will work still with what we had planned. But do you know, we've added some nice benches there. We've worked on turnouts and all kinds of things, so we could have this. And I don't know what you'll do with our new sheltered benches that we finally got there. Are you going to leave them there? If the route changes, it's gone?
There's enough demand that if there are portions along an existing route like the 207 that are no longer served, we would need to move those to a location where they would be used by the public.
Okay. Well, this will give us a chance, and I'm just emphasizing to staff, please watch that, because if we're going to preach connectivity, and we're going to tell people you should do this and you should do that, and this is better health and this is a more vibrant community, then as we've been building that, we have to be careful if we're going to make a big change so that we don't lose what's critical in it.
Oh, absolutely, and we're trying to promote transit as much as possible. Over the last couple of years, this route in particular has been on a downward cycle, and in September, when the Charleston bus came into the Bonneville Transit Center, it further took away the ridership from it. So it's with it running hourly, it's going to probably continue to decline. And the savings from this route in the 211 save us about half of what we need to with the budget shortfall. So it's important to see, make sure that they know what their alternatives are and to promote those and to make sure that people know that just because the route's going away that they're not without service completely.
And particularly as you're doing in the senior homes, because they need that so much and you don't want to foist it on them, and they're very scared when they haven't. They have to have a good amount of time in order so that they understand what's happening. And I really appreciate that you're doing this. You're taking the time for the public input. I want to thank you very much. And we're going to work very hard in that area that we can get you as much public input as possible.
It may be that we need to reevaluate the schedule for some of these public meetings, or to have 2 public meetings in some cases. And so we'd be happy to do that and work with your office to make sure that we can get adequate information and do our due diligence.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yeah, I just had one question. I wonder, are you going to be posting signs in the buses and at the bus stops at all the routes that are impacted?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
I think that'll make a difference.
Comments or questions? Did Suzanne make it today, Jake?
Susanna Beaumont?
I don't believe she was able to attend today.
And we were going to put her on the spot also. Well, I need to acknowledge likewise the briefing was extensive, and a tribute to staff and not only all the work you do in this area, but the passion you have on the microphone when you start listing off numbers of riders on different routes. And I wouldn't even guess what your dreams are at night, but it's greatly appreciated. And also, I think we all acknowledge that because of the tough times economically, that there are some riders that are going to be impacted. We've tried to minimize those impacts, especially with the distance to some of the new alternative routes, but also emphasize the fact, and you did slightly, but emphasize the fact that some of these changes are actually going to enhance and to be benefit to some of the other riders. So there is a balance. I think the board's spoken clearly as far as the public outreach. If we need to, it was extensive on the screen, but as some of my colleagues have spoken, if we need to enhance that, I think it's important, because we'll get perhaps 80–90% of the people participating, but it's that leftover percentage that we really have to go above and beyond to try to get them informed. Great job.
Thank you.
We'd like a motion on that one, I believe, to...
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Item 35, pardon me, is that the Regional Transportation Commission approve the request for proposal structure, evaluation criteria, and evaluation team structure for the next fixed route RFP number 12-081. Operation and maintenance, fixed route transit services, and direct staff accordingly. Now, last month we had a good discussion about how we would structure this procurement, and that's the contract. We received direction from you last month to split our very large bus contract into 2 smaller contracts for transit operations and vehicle maintenance. How that it would break down would be we would have one contract operate out of the southern maintenance facility, our Sunset Maintenance Facility down at Sunset and Decatur area. You see a picture of that maintenance facility here with your express vehicles parked underneath the canopies. And we have another maintenance facility in the northern part of the valley. Now, the name for this facility is a name that only a government agency could come up with, and that's the Integrated Bus Maintenance Facility. And we call it the IBMF, and unfortunately that stuck. And so it's going to be difficult to rename that one. But there's a picture of the IBMF out in North Las Vegas next to the North Las Vegas airport. One contract would operate out of this maintenance facility. We'd separate them geographically. You gave us direction on the terms of the contract, that one contract would be an initial term of 5 years with a 5-year option. The other contract would be an initial term of 4 years with 2 4-year options. We're proposing that the 5 and 5 option be for the Sunset Maintenance Facility contractor, and the 4, 4, and 4 be for the IBMF in North Las Vegas for that contractor. Now, this RFP that we're issuing is substantially different than the last one that we did, and we want to highlight for you some of the major differences between the two. The first major difference is who the evaluators would be. We can go to the next slide, please. The evaluators for this RFP will be the cross-functional RTC staff, which are the people on the left-hand side of your screen that are better looking than the outside consultants we would bring in to help and assist us with the evaluation. And that was also approved by the Commission last month. So that is a significant difference for this RFP. And if we can go to the next slide, what we heard from the Commission last month was we had desire to continue doing what we have been doing, which are value-based procurements. Standard procurement where we would receive proposals and we would evaluate them from a technical and a price standpoint. Now, we're proposing to break this RFP into 2 steps that would combine the strengths of a value-based procurement along with the strengths of a bid. And that's what we heard from the Commission last month, was we liked both elements of those, and we tried to combine them into a 2-step RFP process. Now, the first step in the process would be a regular value-based procurement. Really no difference between what we've done in the past with what we're doing in the first step here. In the past, we've had weights for technical and price at 70 and 30. In the last go-around, we had technical and price weighted at 45-55. What we're recommending to you now, especially in light of the difficult economy and the service cuts that we continue to have to bring to you, is that we continue to have price be a significant percentage. What we're proposing is 50% technical and 50% price. But that, of course, is up to the Commission to direct staff on what you're comfortable with. We would basically do a value-based procurement in the first step. We would receive proposals from what we believe would be a larger number of contractors that could be qualified, since the contracts will be smaller, maybe up to a half a dozen or so, maybe more, maybe even less. But we think we can anticipate about half a dozen. And we'd go through and evaluate them with the outside consultants and the staff based on the weightings that you see here or other weightings that you would direct us to provide. And then what we would do is we would establish a competitive range where the best qualified contractors would rise to the top. And specifically, the methodology that we are considering for how we would narrow the field in this value-based procurement would be, we would have at least the top 3 proposers, or any firm that scores within 80% of the highest score. And if there's a tie, the board would determine the winner. So after we narrow that field through a value-based procurement to get the best qualified contractors, we would invite those best qualified contractors to the second step, which is the best and final offer. We can go to the next slide, please. And simply, very simple, in the best and final offer, the contractors that provide the lowest prices would be selected for contract award. So in that essence, this is the bid portion, that once we establish the best qualified contractors through a value-based procurement, we'd invite them to give us their best and final offer, and the lowest price contractors would get the 2 contracts. That's what we have. That's what we heard from the board at the last meeting. We've tried to combine the elements that you were concerned about into this proposal. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll do our best to answer your questions and see what you have to say.
Questions from the board? Commissioner G?
Thank you. I should have asked this yesterday, but it just dawned on me. Have we gone out to other cities or like cities that use public transportation to see what they've used in their contract process?
Yes.
And which ones did we look at?
We've looked at private contracts everywhere they do them. Los Angeles, Denver, all across the East Coast there are smaller contracts, New York. Boston.
And what did we glean from those that we may have incorporated in here so we know what you all looked at?
If you look at the evaluation factors and the weights, the key things that we look at are the management structure and key personnel. It's probably the most important criterion. Experience and references for the contractors themselves, the vehicle maintenance plans, their staffing, their operations, their safety, their training. We've looked at incentive clauses that other operators provide for contractors. We've also looked at liquidated damage clauses extensively and incorporated a lot of those in there, and we use extensive performance measurement now that we've taken a look at, not just from domestically, but internationally.
And you indicated that innovative would be rolled into not a separate category, but it'd be in the BOFA?
We would,
If that's the direction we
if
go.
proposers have innovative pricing that they would like for us to consider, they would need to include that in a best and final offer.
Okay, in addition, pricing's, in my mind, is different than maybe a new way of doing business, new ideas that come into play. How does that break out? Or where would that come into play?
If they have new ideas, they would present them in the value-based procurement.
Do they ever weigh in on the routes themselves and how we select them?
No, they do not.
Okay. And could you provide for us just samples of what other jurisdictions use, like your two-pager you have of how many years, what they look at in management services? I just think this is an opportunity. I'm glad you're going to meet with all of the purveyors that might be interested, so you can, almost a pre-conference meeting, it kind of sounds like, which makes good sense. Gather that information up front before we put a contract together so we don't get into the same problems that we got into last time.
We are going to offer an industry review this time, and we did last time as well. The difference this time will be that after that industry review, we're going to come back to the board, and we'll have a public hearing where if any contractor doesn't like what they see, they can stand up before the board and they can say so, and then the board will have the final say-so for how the RFP is structured.
And then when we talk about, I don't know if it's this part of the meeting, but who should do the reviews, I still think some outside folks, maybe the university people that deal in transportation that way, should be part of the evaluation panel of some sort, but not us as commissioners, I would think. I think we kind of came to that conclusion last time. And so this is for us to give you what direction?
We want your approval for how the RFP structure has been presented to you today, and then we'll come back to you with a public hearing and you'll have the final word.
If I could clarify, the policy direction you give the board today, the staff, we would structure a draft RFP, which would then be, notice would be published to that and be presented out to the private industry.
And then they would comment
then
back?
there'd be a pre-proposal conference where they can come. There's a comment period, and based on all the questions we get through that, normally then staff, the normal process is staff then just responds to those and issues addendums and finalizes the RFP. Instead, this time we're proposing scheduling at another board meeting an opportunity for staff to present all the comments they've received in writing or verbally at the pre-proposal conference, as well as any of the industry members that want to come and present in person to the board their comments. And then the board could give final direction to the staff on those policy decisions of what additional changes should be made, and then the final RFP issued. Now, there would also then be legally provided a period of time within which they could file a bid protest regarding the actual structure of the RFP, which, is their discretion and would preserve their legal rights to do so, and then that would come back through the process if there were any. And at that point, if there are none, like last time there were none, but we still ended up with issues at the end, I think anyone would be hard put to question how it was all structured, and there would be full opportunity for everyone.
Okay, and where does local DBE or businesses come into play to make sure that we have an effort, all efforts would be made to make sure whoever might be selected would use?
If you want to give us that direction, while we can't, there's the federal requirements that they have to meet for DBE participation. Beyond that, if you want local participation, we can't mandate that, but we can certainly include language in the RFP, even in the initial draft, if you want to give us that direction, that would say that this commission encourages all participants to utilize as much local business and participation as possible.
Right. I would personally, and if there's no objection, I would make that as a direction then, Mr. Chair. And then the collective bargaining agreement, my understanding when I asked yesterday is we cannot direct that they have to honor the exact same collective bargaining agreement, but we are encouraging them to make sure that because you have now potentially two different unions that will be competing as well. So that's another factor that may come into play. But we can encourage that the benefits and wages not be less insurance and so forth, than what's currently contained in the bargaining agreement, and make all efforts to make sure that folks, I just don't want to see the work that was done lost, and I don't want to see the same kind of issues again coming back up. But we have to recognize by now, maybe looking at splitting a contract, you have more than one union that possibly may be in competition. That may all change while we're all going through this. I have no idea, but I just think that we should be acknowledged of that part of it.
Commissioner, I think that can be accomplished, that kind of language. As you've noted, and we had the discussion, under the transit labor law and the decision actually emanating from Las Vegas in the 90s, the actual collective bargaining agreement on a reprocurement does not legally carry over to a new contractor, but as a practical matter, I believe most in the industry look at the existing collective bargaining agreement that's in place and base their pricing proposal on that. They'll look for efficiencies, such which they can accomplish by how they deploy the workforce and workforce rules, but usually wages and benefits don't change significantly. So certainly we will include language as you've requested if that's a direction to try and maintain that would be the desire of the commission while it's not legally binding.
And then on the terms, you have a 10-year potentially and a 12-year for the second contract. What is generally in the world of business now, is 10 years about the shortest timeline you can go for them to be able to recoup dollars in an investment? I know in construction I've been told that, but I don't know what it is in transportation.
There is a significant variance, but what we do see is that in the industry, the trend is definitely towards longer-term contracts like we have presented to you. And that tends to get a lower price, right, because if there is a substantial investment that needs to be made, it does allow the confidence for a firm to give a lower price if they have more years to amortize.
But we have performance standards that if they aren't, then we can say, you're done, you're not performing for our customers, your timeliness is, where does timing of making sure they make our routes? That's all part of the management component, I'm going to assume.
It is.
Okay.
There are liquidated damages that apply if timing standards aren't met.
So today you're asking us to give you this framework, but if we want to change it, we still have the flexibility. I like to read other things, so if you could get some samples of other places and what they've done, I would really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Other councilwoman?
It sounds excellent, the way we're trying to put this together to solve the problems we faced in the past. I want to make sure I understand this well, and that is that we will be making up through staff a proposed RFP, and we will then open that up to the industry, asking them their questions, suggestions, and perhaps from what they say, tweak it a little, or make some changes, or maybe no changes. But in any case, we are opening it up to the industry, and they will be able to make their suggestions to us before we go into how it's permanently going to look like.
That's correct.
Okay, I think you can't be more fair than that in trying to get and solve some of the problems we've had. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, for the board's edification, that essentially was the process. The tweaking we've done this time is we're bringing the board back into that early process, so you will give the final policy direction rather than staff just making that decision.
Councilman.
I got a question, just throwing it out here. When the last day or when the providers can come up and bring up some ideas at the podium and to change the RFP if we have a desire, in my mind, there stands to be a tie vote, or a tie, that's interesting, a tie. But a tie vote on that change. I mean, and so where do we go if we end up on a tie vote to a change to the procurement?
You mean if the board were to tie, like the situation we had in the past? That's
well,
good.
no, not that. Before we even get the procurement out on the street, we were given the providers an opportunity to make recommendations to us, and we have a 4-4 vote on that recommendation. Where would it go from there?
Well, if it's a 4-4 vote, then there'd be no change to whatever
So
was
the-
existing, unless you as a board want to come up with some alternative means of breaking the tie. That'd be up to you.
I would think that in that case that the board may run some risk of violating the settlement agreement if we don't issue a new RFP.
Well, I just was sitting here thinking if some of us felt, pretty one way or the other, and it ends up being a 4, and we don't 4-4 vote.
Well,
and-
the other thing is, if there is a prospective proponent who's requested certain changes made to the draft RFP, the board ties 4-4, that means their suggested change is not adopted. They still have that opportunity to file a bid protest on how the structure of the RFP is.
Okay.
And then it would come back for a full hearing of that and vetting of that. And of course, then if you depending on the outcome of that, if it ends up, unfortunately, a tie again, there'd be, the bid protest would not have been upheld, and you would then ostensibly move forward with the RFP as drafted without their suggested change.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, or we still take,
Commissioner.
I still take the position that the statute requires also for the approval of it more than just a simple majority. So we should resolve that as well, or at least maybe in our rules, make it clear for this time around how we want to deal with that.
That's the discretion of the board.
Comments or questions? I think the glass is half full. I appreciate this tweak because I think in today's meeting, in releasing the draft RFP, that any stakeholder or interested party better take advantage of that. I think at the end of the day, we're giving everybody the opportunity to have their voice heard, make recommendations to staff and the board. But at that point in time, and I appreciate the 4-4 scenario, but even then, what you're saying is if they don't like what the final RFP is going to be presented to the board, suggest something and it's a 4-4 tie, that goes away. Then they have their bid protest. But again, optimistically, I think what we've done with this one is both taking the board direction in a very controversial past RFP and strengthening it. I do believe it's being strengthened. Two specific questions, so there's some clarity. The language on encouraging local workforce, is that something that can be placed into the value-based evaluations?
That's where it would go.
Yes.
Okay, so that is legal.
Yes.
Okay. And then secondly, and likewise, the language of the CBA, which I think was likewise an important issue. You said that it's probable that everybody's going to look at the current contract and use that as a baseline. Can we use language that would indicate this is the current CBA?
Yeah, like last time, we actually provided the then existing CBA to all the proponents so they would have that to review. The intent would be to do the same thing this time, so everyone's working off the same playing field data.
I should, before the board votes, I think I need to reemphasize that this go-around, there are 2 contracts, and part of the stipulation of this RFP will that no one firm may be awarded both contracts. And I think that would help, in my mind at least, reduce some of the potential that we would have for people coming forward to the board to say, well, we're really, really concerned about this. And I think that will help avoid the situation where we're going to be faced with that stalemate. At least that's my hope.
On the value-based, Jake, you just struck a question. On the value-based component, step 1, are they bidding on one, the other, or both at that point in time?
That would be their choice to bid on either one or both.
But that's their opportunity.
Correct.
When they come in.
Correct.
If someone chooses the sunset only, that's their decision.
Correct.
And would be out of consideration for anything else.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, just to clarify something from earlier in the discussion about breaking a tie before going to the BAFO process, where it's just price only as proposed. My suggestion would be, if there's 2 that are tied, just move them both onto the BAFO. I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I mean, if they're of equal score, I think to encourage competition, we'd want to just include them both. There's no reason to distinguish between either one at that point. It's unlikely we'll have a tie in the actual BAFO process, because it's hard to believe the two companies will come up with the exact same prices. But.
And then last question from me. When we get to step 2 and they submit and it's low price wins, is there an opportunity that we could, not so much the board, but we could have internal and perhaps external view those final price bids just to make sure that a separate set of eyes looks and says, these are viable?
Yeah, yes, I think that's something we'd want to do. In fact, before this even goes out, our internal finance staff needs to establish what we believe is a reasonable price for these services. Then the companies, the suggestion would be we have them submit that detailed price and cost breakdown like they did last time, but it'd be escrowed, so it's confidential price information. It was inadvertent that some of it was released last time. We want to avoid that situation because it is a disadvantage to whichever company's pricing model gets released to the others. So we want to avoid that, and actually it doesn't violate the state law because that model is confidential. But having said that, once we actually select who we intend to do business with, their pricing is no longer confidential. We need to have the ability to go back and do our price analysis comparing what price they submitted, who you decide are the apparent winners, have a price analysis done comparing to what we originally proposed compared to the marketplace, and also be able to look at what their actual breakdown was. The others who submitted, and it would be escrowed or kept confidential, give it back, we never even look at it. But those that we think are going to be our winners, we need to look at that and make sure there's nothing that's out of whack with how they came up with their calculations, so that the numbers really make sense to us. And yes, I think it'd be worthwhile to have some outside expertise assisting staff doing that and maybe give a report to the commission. And we can give you some suggestions on individuals, some local, maybe some from the industry who are not involved in the process also.
Very good. Commissioner?
Just one thought. So in the bidding, you would like also direction from the board that we would not want one company to be selected for both divisions, the two separate areas. And secondly, it would not prohibit, or would it, cooperators, I'm sorry, not cooperating, but where they do in some cities where they have joint contracts.
Right.
Because they do that in a few.
Interesting. What if firm A and B bid on both and had some kind of cooperative agreement? Is that what we're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
It's
They do it in Phoenix and a couple other places. So it might be fine, but we should at least discuss that so we know that that's a possibility.
They'd need to identify themselves in the RFP as a joint
absolutely.
venture submittal.
Okay.
I don't think we would allow them to propose a joint venture submittal as well as separate submittals. That would be my,
Yes, that would make
my advice
sense.
to the board.
You're either a joint venture or you're separate on your bid. Yes, that makes good sense. But I remember we talked, or I know Lois had brought it up, and I think I had done some research on some of those. So you would like some additional direction from us that we not allow one company to secure both bids, and I don't think I heard any objections, so I would consider that a direction, Mr. Chair, if that's acceptable. Yeah. And then the second one is to allow for joint venture, but they must disclose up front that that's the way they're going to seek the bid.
And is it your intent that if it is a joint venture, that they still can only receive one part of the contract?
I would think so.
Okay.
I just have a concern with that, and I'm just going to throw it out. Because if we're not allowing them the possibility of both, we run the risk or the possibility of whoever, I'm going to throw it out there, doesn't get the strip, gets the rest. It comes in a lot higher because everybody's going after the strip parcel. It comes in a lot higher than, in order to make ends meet on the higher bid on the other routes, we're going to have to eliminate service. Now we just have taken advantage of our constituents and not I mean, because we got to be careful, because I understand where we're going, and I don't disagree with that to some degree. But when you are saying exactly that they cannot have both, you run the risk of having the second part of it that doesn't get the strip at a higher rate that we're not paying now. And then our constituents don't, we have to start eliminating routes to keep it afloat.
If I could, I'm not, there may be some confusion, because while most of our revenue comes from the strip, the revenue belongs to the RTC.
Right.
They're billing us on a monthly fixed rate and a service hour rate. And so while the strip may have, the split is going to try to be as close as possible. I don't know that it would be 50-50. It may be 55-45 percentage-wise, with the strip portion probably being 55% of the service because of the way that route and service hours break down. So they're going to get paid based on that. It doesn't matter how much revenue is generated from each, and it may be simpler to operate the other community routes rather than the strip because it's a more complicated management to oversee running the strip. I don't know that for a fact, but I mean, our transit people could elaborate on that, but
And also,
from a cost basis, so, you know, it may actually be that the strip operation is more expensive to us, I don't know.
And if I'm not mistaken, part of the reason we're splitting is the staff indicated that the industry is getting more competitive. And we perhaps wouldn't have the 1, 2, or 3. There may be some up-and-coming companies that the off-strip route may be exactly what fits their model coming into Las Vegas.
There is a higher wage scale for the drivers that operate the strip routes, and it is a more expensive per service hour operation because of that fact. And I think that it's an excellent concern that Councilman has identified. I think that largely what we will see is a lot of interest from the private sector community, and I don't think we're going to see, we'd be very surprised if we see a severe or significant order of magnitude difference in the cost per service hour between contracts.
Mayor Tobler?
Yeah, just quickly, you're concerned about the evaluators. You said, do we want to go outside? What was that review of? Because we already have the outside evaluators combined with our staff. I didn't quite catch what you wanted them to review.
When we go to step 2 and the 2 apparent low bidders, I would like someone, I prefer not the board, but I'd like someone internal and perhaps an outside consultant to look and say, these bids are viable, they're feasible, they meet whatever staff's expectations are. So hopefully the perception of someone coming in and lowballing is taken off the table. They're legitimate prices.
Okay, and that is part of your presentation, though, that you're using outside along with staff. You weren't talking about another set of evaluators.
I think these are 2 separate evaluators. We're actually having people evaluate the RFPs for an overall best value procurement from a technical standpoint. And then we would have a separate evaluator come in, similar to what Jeremy Aguero did last time, to take a look specifically at the prices to see if they actually can be done for those prices. And we have more time to do that this go around, and we can have someone, it would be my recommendation to the board that we have someone with transit experience that goes out and takes a look at those.
Staff, any questions of the board as far as direction or clarity? Great. We'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move to adopt the recommendations that were brought forth by staff along with the additional directions given by the board.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next item is citizens' participation, and I would like to state for the record that Councilman Hafen from Mesquite could not be here today because he had a death in the family, and we wish him and his family well, and our sympathy goes out to them.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board? Please step forward, state your name. Mr. Farlow?
Yes, thank you. Todd Farlow, 241 19th Street. I got 2 items. On number 34, Councilwoman Tartanian, you hit upon the major concern there. We're trying to get walkable communities and all of that, and they're trying to take away the bus service at the same time on 207. I live along the 207. Another thing that they're not talking about on the 207 is that in my area, that's where that hill is, from 11th Street to Eastern. I mean, that's one of the steepest hills in town, and people got to walk up that thing. And that's a real problem. The other problem with the 207 that they're not taking into account is that this is an older community with older people, and that we have, in just my precinct, we have 49 boarded up homes. And I mean, so that's 49 houses that's not taken into effect there. The other thing is, this is a large Hispanic community where I am, and they tend to take the bus more. But on the 207 where I live, you're taking away our access to the Meadows Mall and the YMCA on one thing, and you're taking away our access to Smith's and that on the other. And I don't know, that's a real problem to me. So I'm going to be out there speaking against that. The other thing is that I think that we're moving backwards on that. Before the modern era, we had buses that just meandered all over town. And everybody says, why don't we have a grid system? You know, and so everybody has a direct route, or they know exactly where they're going to go with the grid system. And now we're going to have these buses meandering around again. So that's one thing. But the last thing, at the last meeting, Mr. Snow laid out the complete streets project. At the Planning Commission last night, we had a huge complex going in.
Which planning commission?
Las Vegas City planning. And there's a huge complex that's going in at the Strip and Sahara, and that's what we're talking about on the complete streets right now. I asked at the Planning Commission, I says, is the applicant agreeable to go along with the complete streets program? And the staff, city staff, says, well, we couldn't bring this up because that it wasn't adopted. I thought that was adopted at the last meeting. Am I wrong on that? It hasn't been adopted. Well, what about all of these projects? We got big projects that's in the pipeline right now. How do we know that they're agreeable to this? Because I am all for this. I'm all for this, but I mean, we need to get this thing going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Seeing no one, Happy New Year. Mayor Tobler, I'm sorry.
Just very quickly, I wanted to thank NDOT. Boulder City had a much more pleasant holiday this time. We did have some backups because of the light, but nothing like it was before. And just you quickly got in there, got the project done, so we appreciate that.
This meeting is adjourned.
Your agenda is in order. We're ready for the first agenda item, which is to approve the agenda.
A motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next item is to receive the general manager's report. And we'd like to show you some pictures of a great public works project that commenced out in Mesquite, Nevada. You can see the demolition of the bridges for a portion of I-15 that goes through the city of Mesquite. And great construction project that involved a bridge slide as temporary bridges were slid in place temporary bridges were built and constructed, and new bridges for I-15 were slid into place with the assistance of the Federal Highway Administration. Their administrator was out for the project, and Susan Martinovich, the director of the Nevada Department of Transportation, was there for the bridge slide, along with Christina Quigley, Deputy General Manager of the Regional Transportation Commission. A great event, a great project. I want to show you what the project will look like when it is completed. And that interchange will be replaced with a couple of roundabouts, Commissioner Gianchiliani. It is a great project that, with this innovative construction method, will save the taxpayers about $35 million. And once the project is complete, with the roundabouts, which will not have traffic control devices on them, they're just designed to calm traffic and have drivers pay attention more closely to what is going on, and it will be a very green project, fewer emissions. People will be able to get to where they need to go quicker and faster, and in a very pleasing fashion. Great landscaping and some great views are being built into this roundabout project. Congratulations to the state, congratulations to the Federal Highway Administration, and to the RTC, which provided much of the funding for this project. I don't know if Director Martinovich wants to say anything about this before we go on or not, but it's a great project, great partnership we have with NDOT and our federal partners.
Is it the first one in the state of Nevada, the bridge slide?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Jacob. It was a design-build project. It's our third design-build project, and then as part of that is the ABC construction, first in Nevada. We're very excited, and again, I just would like to compliment the team that put this together. Next week, this week was the first half, and next week will be the second half of the bridge. So if you have an opportunity to go out there, you will be able to see it. But we have a time-lapsed photography that we have been taking pictures, and we hope to be able to bring that and work with you all in showing that next week. But it's pretty exciting stuff. It's really cool stuff if you're a bridge geek. So all great things.
Thank you.
Very high tech. The bridge was slid into place using Dawn dish soap, I believe. And I think we got the Procter & Gamble company to donate that dish soap, and I think they may even be helping to fund the ribbon cutting when we have a big party. So, and I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek, but literally Dawn dish soap was used to slide the bridge into place. So very innovative and very inexpensive. I don't know.
We went out on site, and just standing there, there was a bottle that you buy in the store, and you're going, wow, they really did use Dawn soap. So one bottle at each side, and it's like applied just by squirting. It was pretty incredible, the low tech for a high tech endeavor.
And the construction workers, obviously, the cleanest hands in town. Commissioner G?
Thank you. I think two things, too. I think the paper noted